Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy, Jonathan Macri, with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. And I'm very excited today, as much as I am down today, recording this on Thursday at noon, exactly, because of last night's events at Madison Square Garden, which I was there to witness. I'm happy to be talking to my good friend and basketball confidant. I don't know if that term applies. For the first time since the game started. And now this for the first time, I talked to you since you announced your role change at The Athletic, but I don't know if we had talked since you actually started writing non-Knicks stuff. Fred Katz. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I'm still, you know what's amazing for all of us? That our group text thread is not public. Because I'm still reeling over you saying that Cam Payne has spunk, which just inspired a series of reactions about how you don't have any spunk at all because you voluntarily cut it off.
I mean, are we really going to do it? I have spunk. It just
no,
is not.
Your spunk has no spunk.
Well, that's different though.
It's sad. It's depressed. Your spunk needs Prozac.
My spunk is exactly where it needs to be, my friend.
It just is like it's like you know the episode of Seinfeld where the water pressure in the shower is off in their hairs. That's how it comes out. That
when he gets the nozzle that's like for like industrial strength, where he's like they watch elephants with this thing.
Yes, but you're not industrial strength.
I'm not industrial strength. No, I'm not.
No,
I'm very much.
No. It comes out like New York traffic at 4:15 p.m. Midtown in Manhattan.
I have the perfect kind of spunk in my spunk. It's not unnecessary spunk.
I think people should know.
What people know, Fred.
Tell
the people who tune in to listen to Knicks talk. Tell them what they should know, please.
Andrew is helpless right now. Andrew is producing multiple live streams, I believe, at once. Is not able.
I think he's talking to Evan Roberts right now. Shout out to Evan Roberts.
Is not able to interject. Is sick.
Oh.
And we are just on here, and the parents have left the 7-year-olds home alone for some insanely inappropriate reason. Things are good.
I mean, listen, parents have to make difficult choices every day. It's really hard being a parent, as you will find out, I'm sure, someday. You won't. I've already found out all I need to know. I can't wait till you start finding out about this stuff. That'll be a fun day for me. Where the hell do we even go from here? Okay. Yeah, let's it was good. It was good seeing you last night at the game.
It's always wonderful.
Yeah.
Great to tell your wife that I pray for her every day.
You told her, so I didn't need to. But she appreciated that, and she said it was lovely to meet you. All right, we've put it off long enough. Let's talk about this basketball team, which I don't know. We'll start here. I'm having trouble coming to grips with how I am feeling about last night because, as I said in a Substack chat post earlier, I think I took it particularly hard because my wife and I hadn't been to a game together in 10 years, and it was last minute. We didn't find out we were going until literally like the day before. And we got a sitter, the whole thing. So we just were having a blast to get out, just the two of us to go to a basketball game. And so to win the game in that fashion would have been like just a perfect capper to what was a really nice evening. I still had a nice night, but like I was so down in the dumps because I was like, man, that would have been so cool. That said, I think especially after listening to Benji's monologue, I feel better about where they are at today than I did before the game. And that's what I want to ask you. Before last night's game and since last night's game, how are you feeling about the Knicks?
I'm in a very strange spot where I don't know what to make of them right now. I think if I had, you know how Zach Lowe and I think it was Arnovitz used to do the most confusing teams.
Yeah.
Before every season. If I had to go through and do most confusing teams in the league right now, today, you know, the 10 to 13 games into the season, depending on the team, I think the Knicks would be my most confusing team.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know what to
What's
make.
confusing about them to you? Or what isn't confusing about them to you? Maybe it's a better question. I don't know.
I talked about this on my pod, but the way that some of their guys who are struggling
Okay.
is weird. Like Mikal Bridges is struggling in a weird way. You know, the analogy that
the first thing that I brought up.
Yeah, the analogy that I've made is, for example, Dante DiVincenzo is not hitting his threes in Minnesota right now. He's really struggling. That's a normal way to struggle. He's taken like 8 threes a game and he's just not hitting them. He's not making his shots. He's struggling. It's not good. I'm also pretty confident that he's going to have a stretch of 8 games where he hits 52% of his threes and he'll be fine. And even if he doesn't, and he just has a bad year, that would be a normal way to have a bad year. Dude's missing shots that he was making. And I'm not saying it's expected, but it's just a usual way. Mikal Bridges is struggling in a weird way where it's like the dude has completely, not that he was ever a free throw hound, but he has completely and utterly stopped getting to the line. And it's not a case of not getting fouls. It's that he will literally fade away every single time he gets near the paint. It is weird that he's shooting 15% on above the break threes and 47% on corner threes. It is weird that the Knicks are 29th in free throw rate. Like, I don't know what to make. They're fourth in offense in spite of being 29th in free throw rate, in spite of being bottom 10 in restricted area attempts, in spite of being not a good corner 3-point shooting team on the whole, which I think will change because OG Anunoby's number is gonna come up. Their offensive dynamic is really good because the talent is good and Cat is having a great year. And if you told me coming into this year, okay, Brunson's going to be averaging 24 and 7 on okay efficiency, Josh Hart's going to have a great year, and Anunoby's going to have a great year, Cat's going to have a great year, where's this team going to be at through 11 games? I'd be like, they're pretty good. And they're struggling. I don't think this is what the team is going to look like in the most important moments of the season. I think there will be some sort of trade that they make at the deadline, whether that's using Precious Achiuwa, whether that's using Mitchell Robinson's salary, whether that's using something else or multiple guys. They get pick swaps in 26 and 2030. They're just difficult to make of. The inconsistent defense from Bridges is weird. He'll have nights where it's like he was good against Milwaukee defensively. He was good against Philadelphia defensively. And then he'll have nights like he had against Indiana where it's like he couldn't stay in front of anybody. First half against Chicago, couldn't stay in front of anybody. And the back and forth nature there is weird. I think the vast majority of people, certainly the Knicks, were of the assumption, I was too, for what it's worth, Bridges' dip in defense, it's not like he was bad in defense, but Bridges' dip in defense the last couple of years was because of the offensive load that he was taking on in Brooklyn. And that when you lessen the offensive responsibilities, then the defensive intensity will be able to go up. And we haven't really seen that yet, even though the offensive responsibilities have been lessened. They're just weird to make. It's weird to fall down 22 points to the Bulls at home and then go on a 17-0 run and then just have it inspired with Jalen Brunson off the court. There is just a lot of Knicks stuff happening that I'm like, I don't know what to make of that. They also don't look comfortable together yet. No.
So I completely agree with you on the Bridges thing. And what I was going to ask you is if you had a theory as to why Bridges is struggling the way he is on defense, because I keep getting asked that and I don't have a great answer. You at least just posed something, which is maybe it's a carryover effect of like, you can't just flip the switch back like to how you were defensively before you had the offensive load that you did in Brooklyn. It's as good a theory as I mean, do you have any other theories?
No, I have no idea why it's happening.
Okay. Yeah.
That's not even really my theory, to be honest.
What do you mean? You don't, that isn't your theory. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just saying, like, I think people assume that when you gave him fewer offensive responsibilities, the defense would go back to all defense levels, and it hasn't gone back to all defense levels. But I'm not even like writing it off as like it won't go back there. How many times have we seen Thibs take a guy and just help him reach his maximum capacity defensively? And we see it all the time with bigs, and we see it a lot of the time with wings. Like guys max themselves out defensively when they're with Thibs. And so I'm not saying that's not going to happen. I don't anticipate them making any changes of significance at all in the near future. I think I get the sense, for what it's worth, when I talk to people there, I don't think people are overly concerned about the start. I think they think it'll come together. It's 11 games and it's not that big of a deal. And I don't think the Knicks are going to like fall into the play-in, especially with how bad the East is. I thought of them as a legit contender coming into this year. And I'm like, I don't know. I just don't know. And I'm not sure where to rank them in the East.
So the reason I was surprised by when you said that they, for you, are the most confusing team, or potentially the most confusing team, is that other than the Bridges thing, which I agree is somewhat inexplicable, because it's like there's a lot of things that we could chalk up to chemistry on both ends of the floor, and the ways that he is struggling on defense, you would not think that has anything to do with chemistry, because these are individual plays that he's making, right? Where it's just about like his point of attack defense. That is the most individual defensive aspect of defense that there probably is, right? You know, so I don't, unless I'm forgetting something. So it wouldn't strike you as that's something that's going to get better the more they play together. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. Other than that, though, and I guess maybe a little bit of like you said, the how Bridges is struggling, the how Brunson is struggling. Like it's very weird to me that he started off hitting half of his threes, and then the last 3 games he hasn't been able to. He hit a few last night, but that that completely fell off. But now he's back towards where we expect him to be from the mid range, where he was terrible for his standards over the first 7 or 8 games, whatever that was. So that has been cut, but like everything else, I don't know what else about them is really like. Cat is exactly as you would have figured Cat would be on both ends of the floor, right? He's
actually better.
Well, we could talk about the offense.
I don't know what more that you could want him to do.
Oh no,
he's been incredible. He's having an incredible season.
OG Anunoby was off last night, and you sense maybe he was a little tired, even more than everybody else. He's been amazing, and amazing in the ways that I thought he would be amazing. Josh Hart's been Josh Hart. I mean, you could write several volumes of an encyclopedia series about Josh Hart and his Josh Hartness. You would be the authority on that, and yet you could summarize him as in one sentence, and you could say it's just Josh Hart. Josh Hart's been Josh Hart, and like the bench, and then there's been the injuries. Like they haven't had a bench, you know, like. Thibs isn't doing anything out of character. Thibs has been a caricature of himself in the way he has gone about coaching this team so far, in terms of the scheme that they're playing on defense, substitution patterns and minutes and all that stuff. And like the chemistry stuff on offense to me was predictable, I guess. And here's the thing, like, yeah, I didn't expect the defense to. Here's what it comes down to, I guess. And we could talk about it in the context of Bridges. We could talk about it in the context of the scheme. We could talk about it in the context of personnel. But like, if you told me before the season that after 11 games, they were going to be the 4th best offense in the league and the 20th best defense, which is where they are on NBA.com's stats. I don't know if Cleaning the Glass has them a little higher or lower, but like, whatever, around there, top 5 offense, barely out of the bottom 10 in defense. I would have been like, you know, I would have hoped that they could have gotten in the top half of the league in defense. But you're integrating Cat, you're doing whatever you're doing. That checks out somewhat for me. And here they are, and I think it's the way that they have looked, as bad as they have looked at times on defense, that is the reason why the concern level is where it is. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, that's fair. I think the other part of it is, so I wrote before the season Like the story that I wrote leading into this season was about the Knicks. Was the Knicks are betting that their starters can be unbelievable enough to carry them to being awesome. And I wrote this, I believe I wrote this like before the Precious Achiuwa injury. And before, I believe I wrote this, maybe I didn't, but I wrote it without regards to the Precious injury. It was the Knicks are betting this starting lineup is going to be awesome enough for them to be awesome. And you look at the teams that are constructed as starting lineup is awesome. Everything else is a work in progress. And sometimes it really works. And sometimes it ends up being disappointing. And you think of that team as awesome because the starters are awesome and there's just not enough. For example, last year's Suns.
How about last year's Bucks?
Last year's Bucks as well. I mean, very, very similar situations with the Bucks and the Suns, where the Suns had a really good offseason with their minimum guys and brought in a new coach, and the coach is a hit. And the Bucks brought in a new coach mid-year last year. Their minimum guys, who I liked at the time, have not worked out till on right side of the rotation. Gary Trent hasn't made an impact yet and is dealt with injuries. Like those guys, you know, Taurean Prince has not been great for them. Like they're dealing with injuries as well with Chris Middleton, whatever else. But it's almost a 2-year process. Last year's Suns were the best starting lineup in the NBA, plus 15.7. And everybody talked about how the big three didn't work. And they were plus 15.7 points per 100 possessions. And that team was still a disappointment because they didn't have stuff off the bench. And I wrote the Knicks are banking that this starting lineup will be awesome. And I had no doubts the starting lineup would be awesome. I still think the starting lineup will find a way to be really good. However, that Knicks starters have played 196 minutes together. I know it's only been 11 games, but 196 minutes on a lineup is actually an okay sample size.
It's not nothing.
It's the most minutes any lineup has played together in the league. The Knicks starters are getting outscored by 2.8 points per 100 possessions. They have been a disaster defensively, which is a huge problem. And it's not just the Brunson Towns connection there. They have been really not good defensively. They are not like first half of Chicago. Chicago was swinging it side to side way too easy. Their closeouts weren't good enough. Their rotations weren't good enough. Their point of attack wasn't there. It was a problem defensively. And it's weird. It's just weird to evaluate this team, which has pinned everything on its starting lineup. And yet it has a positive net rating, but the starting lineup has a negative net rating.
Here's the other part of that. Well,
Mikal Bridges is the other part of that. Mikal Bridges numbers.
So the net rating is plus 4.2. I'm going to give you the net rating of 4 starters: Josh Hart plus 5.0, OG plus 4.7, Jalen Brunson plus 4.5, Karl-Anthony Towns plus 4.4. Who didn't I mention? Mikal Bridges minus 0.6. Now that number by itself is not atrocious, but if you look at how the team is doing when Mikal Bridges is off the floor, you want to wager a guess as to what it is on NBA.com?
Well, there's something like 30 points per 100 possessions better when Bridges is off the court, right?
So the cleaning the glass probably has it even bigger because this is they are outscoring teams by 20.4 points per 100 possessions in the 110 minutes that Mikal Bridges has not played.
So 21 points. So one thing that I would caution with the early season numbers as well is it's still early enough to where that Detroit game throws off the net rating stats.
That's true.
And so when you look at them as 4th in offense and 20th in defense, that gap is not quite as wide once you take out the outliers. The outliers are going to mess around with things.
But everybody has an early season blowout here and there, don't they?
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Like if they don't, like other teams, are going to get the benefit.
I'm just saying that's not necessarily indicative of the team that you are. That game wasn't indicative of what the Knicks are, and it wasn't indicative of what Detroit is.
No, it was not.
Detroit has been very competitive in every other game, and they just came out and they got waxed. Knicks played a great game. Detroit had a horrible ball control game, and they just got annihilated. I'm just saying what's going on with the Knicks. It's just weird. I am not arguing that they aren't good. I'm not arguing that they aren't going to finish top 3 in the East. I'm not arguing they aren't going to solve this. I'm just, they're really good offensively. Like they're fourth in offense. Like you said, they are really good offensively. I am just saying that the way that they have gotten to 5 and 6 is not if you told me the Knicks are 5 and 6, I'd have thought they got there in a different sort of way.
Well, let's talk about how they got there then, because the defense, I think here's the biggest issue with the defense. Other than the Detroit game, which I agree you throw out because Detroit was like, they were playing like a group of middle school boys who had never like played a game together and didn't have a coach. And I'm trying to think if there have been any other than that game. I thought their defense in the Milwaukee game, like they ran Milwaukee off the line, which you want to do. Like they
were
Milwaukee,
good in that one.
What's that?
They were good. They were good in that game.
They were good, but also like Giannis and Dame like got what they wanted inside the arc. But that's what Dame and Giannis do. It's like it is what it is, and the Bucks don't have anybody else. As you saw last night when they almost lost to the aforementioned Pistons, and they didn't even have Dame. But Giannis is Giannis. Like I don't know that we've seen anything from the Knicks defense through 11 games where you could be like, oh, there it is. Like I even went back and I watched all of the defensive possessions, or at least all the field goal attempts and all of the Bulls turnovers from last night, starting midway through the third quarter, right before we came on. Benefit of you being late. So thank you for being late. It allowed me to do a little bit of homework. And like, you know, there were like, Cat like reached in for a turnover, you know, that was he caused. Like Deuce had a nice dig that I think caused the Levine turnover, but like the Bulls had several open shots that they just missed. Now they also had some decently contested shots that they made, so like those kind of balance each other out. But even during that comeback, I wasn't seeing, and also the other thing about the Bulls bench is atrocious. Like, well, I shouldn't say atrocious. They're not good. Like the Bulls, like they're going whatever 9 or 10 deep right now, and some of those guys are probably not guys who should be NBA rotation players at the moment if you're trying to be a decent team. I didn't see anything where I was like, man, they figured it out. And I remembered being there watching, like Cat was more aggressive here and there, and I think he was. And maybe that's more of the answer. But I think that's the most troubling thing is we don't have like, okay, well, at least we know when they get there, it's going to look like this. I don't think we know that. So that's my next question to you is, if they do figure it out on defense, what do you think it's going to look like? And maybe part of that question is, who do you think is going to be the predominant figures for when they do it, if they do it?
I don't think this team is constructed to be a dominant defensive team.
Oh, they can't be a dominant defense. No.
I think if they were to make a big leap defensively and they got to the best version of themselves defensively, I think that probably starts with Mikal Bridges. And
in what way? In this role that he's in now, or in doing something slightly different?
I don't see anything that they're doing wrong schematically with Bridges. If they're going to reach the best version of themselves, then that includes Bridges reaching the best defensive version of himself, which means improving as a point of attack defender. Like you can use OG Anunoby on initiators more than you have so far, but then you lose him as a help defender. He's having such a good defensive season. You
also tire him out probably.
And you put him in a situation where he's not going to be in the most conducive place for him to excel. You know, last year they play Philadelphia in the first round and Anunoby guards Maxi. And it's not that Anunoby did a bad job on Maxi, but Maxi went off in that series. And OG is a turn off the faucet guy, but he is better against big wings than he is against quick twitch guards. And part of the reason that you traded for Bridges was not just because, okay, you've got these two awesome wing defenders and Hart's good as well, obviously. And you've got this incredible tandem of Bridges and Anunoby. And it's not just about the talent. It's also about the way that they guard and what their strengths and weaknesses are. They fill in for each other very well where the other one struggles. Anunoby is at his best when he can guard a big wing. Bridges, at the best version of him, the ideal version of him, is going to shut guys' water off the smaller guards and is going to be able to fight through screens. People talk so much about the drop coverage that they're running. And for what it's worth, I don't think they're running drop as often as people make it seem. People make it seem like they just run drop every single possession, every single pick and roll, and that's it. And that's not the case.
They sure as shit didn't last night.
Yes. It's just flat out not the case. And people had a moment there where everybody was crapping on Karl-Anthony Towns with the drop. It's like, you can't run drop with Karl-Anthony Towns. You can't run drop with Karl-Anthony Towns because he's giving up all these shots at the rim and guys are getting opportunities to take wide open shots. And if you want to take away the 3-pointer, you can run 2 coverages that give you the best chance of doing it. You could switch, you could drop. Those are the 2 pick and roll coverages you can do if you want to take away the 3. The drop is going to give you an opportunity, is going to give the offense an opportunity for guys to take pull-up threes. But most players in the league are going to be worse at pull-up threes. And most players in the league you're going to be okay with them taking that if that's what you can concede if you're going to take away the other stuff. You can drop or you can switch, and you don't always want to switch with Cat. If you want to hedge, you want to show him recover, you want to blitz, you're going to put your defense into rotation. You're going to give up much more of an opportunity for swing threes and cutting layups and all that kind of stuff for errors. You might give yourself a better chance for turnovers. You're going to give yourself a worse chance for those egregious errors. When you run drop, everybody has paid attention to Karl-Anthony Towns. There is a ginormous burden when you run drop on the guy guarding the ball, though. And when you run a drop, what you are saying is not just I'm insulating my defense from not having to go into rotation. What you're also doing is you're saying, I need to be confident that the guy guarding the ball is going to fight through this screen in the way he is supposed to fight through the screen. He's going to get around it and get over it when he needs to. He's going to get around it and get under it when he needs to. He is going to fight through that screen and he's going to be in position. He's going to catch up with his defender. And there are too many times where Bridges has hit a screen and that's been the end of the play. There were moments yesterday. There's a moment yesterday in Chicago where they are not supposed to switch, but Bridges hits a screen and Bridges is just like, oh, well, it's not pick and roll on the right wing, side pick and roll. And Bridges hits screen. He's like, oh, well, and he and Cat have to switch. And they didn't need to switch on that play. They are just giving up the switch too easily. They're conceding it. And to me, so much of what you want to do in a Thibs defense, people talk about rim protection, whatever else. So much of what you want to do in a Thibs defense is you have to take care of the point of attack. And right now, I don't think they're taking care of the point of attack as well as they could be. If you get a guy who can shut off the point of attack, and then you have a wing in Anunoby who can shut off the weak side of the court, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape, even if the rim protection is not there, because guys aren't going to be able to get to the rim to begin with. And you're going to be taking away threes because of your coverages. And I think that's why they haven't changed up their defensive principles all that much. They've adjusted depending on personnel, but they haven't changed their principles. They haven't said, you know what, we are going to put the team in rotation, have wings flying everywhere, and we're going to try to get a ton of turnovers, and that's it. Like, I think it starts with, like, honestly, Bridges executing better, because right now the biggest chasm is the way we've seen him perform and the way that he's performing defensively so far.
The old play better adjustment. I thought, but it was interesting hearing you talk about this, because last night again, they had their issues at the point of attack, and what did that result in? It resulted in a lot of Chicago mid-range shots, which they did a really good job of making, because they have some nice mid-range shooters, guys who could hurt you from floater range. And then the Knicks, I thought, because you said, like, the way to take away threes is to play drop coverage. Well, not if you have guys flying in to help, because your point of attack defender gets beat. And to their, I don't want to give the Knicks really much credit for anything defensively last night, but, like, they were helping off of guys that you do not expect to make 3-point shots at the rate that they were making them last night. And when Pat Williams does what he does, I mean, there was a guy who hit a 3 last night in the fourth quarter. I did not know was an NBA basketball player, Fred. I think it's the Bulls, like something Phillips. Do you know who this is? Because I do. I'm just flatly going to admit that I do not know who this person is.
Phillips Norelco?
No, I think his last name is Phillips. I'll look it up
Phillips
right now.
Norelco.
I don't care. We're going to do this live on the pod. Who is this person that hit a 3 against the Knicks last season or last night? Because I had never heard of this person before in my life. But anyway, that person,
Julian Phillips, by the way.
Julian Phillips. So you know who you were playing coy. Yeah.
Julian Phillips,
1 for 1 from deep. What?
Julian Phillips Norelco. He was their second round pick last year. And my goodness, does he get a close shave?
He has a little chin fuzz on his profile picture, actually. Second round pick, the 35th pick in the draft. He's shot well from 3 this year, so give him credit for that. So we're going far afoul here, but they're just, nobody feels the Knicks on defense. Nobody's feeling them right now at all. They felt them in the run, and that was a lot of credit to Cam Payne, who we were talking about on our text thread yesterday as well. I thought that's what you were referring to when you were like, if people could see our text conversation. I thought you were going to give me a compliment that I stood up for Cam Payne. As did you, actually. We were the two who stood up for Cam Payne yesterday before the game. So
yes,
kudos to us.
Yes, Cam Payne doesn't give a shit.
No, he doesn't.
He does not give a shit.
It's great. I love it.
The problem is that Cam Payne has not been excellent for a 7th man. And I think that's where the problems fall. If he's your 9th man,
you're in great shape.
You're fine. You're fine.
Or even your 8th, you could argue, but
he's played with good energy defensively. I think he's been really handsy on the ball. And on a team where I think guys there's a very obvious not wanting to toe step sort of thing. And there are too many times where Anunoby's been great this year, but he has been doing this one thing, which I think is indicative of kind of the larger problem, which is their issues. There's some issues on the margins. And for what it's worth, I would bet my entire life that Thibs does not want this. There's no way in the world Thibs wants what I'm about to say. But Anunoby has done this probably 5 times this year, where there is a kick out to him. He could drive, he could shoot, and he pump fakes, and he goes one dribble, and he goes up for the 19-footer. And I'm willing to bet that I think he's probably done that 5 times. I think he's probably made 3 of them. He's a really good mid-range shooter, and he's really good at that shot, but it's just a bad shot. It's a bad shot for anyone other than Kevin Durant. If you're Kevin Durant, it's a great shot. If you're Kevin Durant, it's a great shot because Kevin Durant literally hits that shot at like a 55% rate, which is just freaking insane. I just lose my mind over watching that dude play basketball. But for anybody else, even if you're great at that, it's not the shot unless you just flat out can't shoot threes. It's late in the shot clock. But Anunoby can shoot threes. I asked Thibs about those sorts of plays before the game yesterday, and Thibs flatly said that he has told OG if it's like, I asked him about how he wants OG reading those situations when he could catch and go or when he could shoot. And Thibs said when it's a 50-50 situation, like I told him to let it fly. Just let it fly. Just put it up. And I think Thibs would like to see him putting up more. I don't remember why I told this story. Right. Because I just think it's indicative of
an uncertainty between these guys.
Just a kind of discomfort, a kind of like the machine not being perfectly oiled yet. And I do anticipate that kind of stuff will get better.
Yeah, but is there any of that stuff on defense? We're talking about stuff on offense, and I agree. I do think that they, just watching their games, they have played more like a top 10 offense than a top 5 offense, which maybe goes to your Detroit game point. But like, because there is clearly room to grow on offense, and I don't think there's anybody has any questions about that. I think it's about the other end. It's like that's not toe. What did you call it? Toe stepping, toe tapping, whatever. Something with your toes. That's just like, I don't know. Can they? So again, I'm going to throw it back to you. What do you think happens first? Let's ask this. Do you think that they get good enough on defense where the scheme and the personnel can stay as is and it's satisfactory to them? Like we're the 13th best defense in the league. We'll live with that. B, they change the scheme, or C, they change the personnel in the starting lineup. And if you want to, for C, changing personnel in the starting lineup, if you want to include Mitch in that conversation, which I understand that's a fraught proposition for several reasons, let's imagine a world where Mitchell Robinson is back on January 1st and he looks like Mitch again, just for the purposes of this exercise.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm glad I wrote right after the Cat trade. I wrote the thing the Knicks need to figure out is Cat a 4 or a 5 in this lineup?
It was a prescient article by you.
And a prescient Chua article. And so when I wrote that, I know there were some people who were like, Cat is not ideally a 4. That was a situation in Minnesota and that was it. But this is why I wrote that story. I don't know what Mitchell Robinson's going to look like if and when he comes back. I don't know. I think he came back last year from the injury in March and he never looked like the early season version of himself. I don't know what kind of shape he's going to be in. I don't think it's not like, the original reports were December or January. The vibe that I get, at least, is like, I would be surprised. It's not like it's going to be like December 1st. I don't think that's happening. So I think they're going to wait a little more time. They're going to see. I don't think the organization is sitting there being like, oh, once Mitch is back, good to go. I think the organization is trying to be realistic about the contributions Mitchell Robinson could give them, or maybe might struggle to give them this year.
If that was their plan for myriad reasons, then I'm not going to be like everybody should be fired, but like I would be deeply, deeply, deeply troubled if a single prominent member of the organization was like hanging their hat on Mitchell Robinson returning again for a multitude of reasons.
No, I don't think they will. I do think Precious Achiuwa will make a difference.
So do I. I agree. Yeah.
Precious was good for them.
Yeah, he's good.
He is a good defensive player and can make a difference. I think there is a world where it's like you pair Mitchell Robinson's $14 million salary, Precious Achiuwa's $6 million salary. You send out a couple of first round swaps and you get back a center who can protect the rim. You get back maybe another big wing. You use Mitch's salary to bring back another big wing. I think the way that the defense gets up to 13th is with that extra trade they feel like they have in their pocket.
So, yeah, but you just threw out two extraordinarily different things, because if they use their remaining assets to trade for a center, then ostensibly that center they're going to bring in to not play 10 minutes a game. They're going to play that person 25, 30 minutes a night, something along those lines, which means that you are playing that player. That means about half of Towns' minutes, probably at least half of Towns' minutes, are coming at the 4. Versus if they go get a big wing, then that's, again, doubling down and like, okay, 35 minutes a game for Cat. Every one of those minutes is going to be at, well, maybe not everyone, but like the vast majority of those is going to be at the 5.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think they are probably at a point where they're like, we got to see some more about what this is. We are in the point of observing. I don't get the sense that they as an organization are like, here is the way that this is going to work out. I think they are more in a position of like, let's get a larger sample size on this, see what happens, and then make a necessary move in February, if that's the way to go. Now, if they continue to struggle, maybe the strategy in February changes, but I don't think they anticipate the struggles continuing to this degree.
I don't think so either. I think the most interesting question for me Because the notion that, and this is why I said what I just said about Mitchell Robinson, the notion that they are going to inject into this starting lineup a center who has, I'll choose my words carefully here because I've been crapping on Mitch a lot lately, even though he's awesome. And if he's your starting center and like that's the way you got to go, you can win a shit ton of games and you can win playoff series with Mitch Robinson as like the center of your both ends. Like there's ways to do that. The Knicks have figured out how to do that for a few years now. But if your goal is to win a championship, the notion of injecting a guy in this starting lineup, which is currently unstoppable when it gets going, and even when it's not really going, who cannot cleanly catch a basketball in traffic, I just think is wildly insane. Like, I cannot get past that part. Now, the more interesting question for me is obviously you're not going to go out and get Isaiah Hartenstein, but if you could get a guy that's not like a stretch five, but a guy with skill, like somebody brought up the idea of like Jakob Poeltl to me this week as like a trade target. Like if you get a guy like that who could do real stuff on offense, who is a guy that defenses have to like pay attention to, who could put the ball on the floor, who could hit a shot outside of 3 feet, and he's a good center and could do maybe some different things on defense, that's at least a conversation that I'm more willing to have. But then I look at it and I'm like, all right, so you're going to go get Jakob Poeltl, who's making, was it Poeltl making 20 a year, 22 a year? And he's what percent better of a basketball player than Precious Achiuwa? I don't know what the number is, but like, that's why I think it's interesting what you said a minute ago. Like, let's see what happens when Precious gets back. Like, what does that show us? And that's kind of what I'm waiting for as like the next significant piece of evidence to this puzzle. And then maybe after we see that for 10 games, then maybe we could draw some more conclusions.
Yeah, they're going to play around with lineups. They're going to see what the starters look like with Precious out there instead of Josh Hart, or Precious out there. Maybe Precious out there as the first sub for Cat before Cat comes back in with the bench. They're going to see how that lineup works. And then that's like all of a sudden Precious goes in for Cat, and like all of a sudden that's a switch everything lineup, you know, other than Brunson. You just basically everybody's a switching partner there and you're good to go. Like there are a lot of things that I think they're still building a sample on and figuring out. It also might get to a point where we're like, oh, starters clicked. Like you ask what can get better. And I really do think defensively, it's really an execution thing on what can get better.
I hope
that's what can get better.
I hope so.
The communication can get better.
Well, that's been atrocious.
The communication can get way better, but that's again, something that comes with familiarity, and familiarity comes with time. And that's not something we know. And 2 months from now, we'll be like, oh, they're gelling. You know, when Josh Hart first got to the Knicks, he was great. And when Dante DiVincenzo first got to the Knicks, he was really good off the bench. But last year's Knicks didn't become that sort of greater than the sum of their parts as soon as the season started. You know, we were watching that team, and there was something that clicked as soon as the Anunoby trade was made. But there was something about that team that was greater than the sum of its parts. And that came from time and familiarity. You know, Isaiah Hartenstein, who people attribute so much of this team's chemistry to from last year, and rightfully so, by the way, he really struggled his first 40 games with the Knicks.
Oh my God.
He struggled.
He was a punching bag. Every night on post games, people will complain about him.
Yep. And he struggled, and he admittedly struggled. He struggled with the adjustment of his role change from the way the Thibs used him versus the way Ty Lue used him. He loves Ty Lue. He absolutely adores Ty Lue. And he was struggling with that sort of change. He was struggling with the way that Thibs wasn't using him in the high post very much to facilitate. And all of a sudden, both he and Thibs adjusted. He said, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to listen to everything this coach says to me. I'm just going to listen to everything he says to me. And I'm not sure if this is the exact right way for me to be used, but I'm just going to do it. And Thibs said, you know what? We're also going to run more high post stuff through you. We need to make that change. And by year 2, he starts to get way better. By year 2, he gets to a point where like midway through the year, and he's starting over Mitch now because Mitch got hurt. It's like the bread and butter of the Knicks offense is the Brunson Hartenstein pick and roll. It's the Hartenstein high elbow sets where he's going in dribble handoffs and slinging the ball to cutters. And He's been excellent defensively, and Thibs is instilling that trust in him. But also, you talk to Isaiah Hartenstein, and it's like he says, I started to just do everything that Thibs told me. I started to just not that he was being defiant, but it's just like wanting to be bought in and like actually fully just being like, screw it, I'm bought in. It's just a different mentality. He says, I started listening to Thibs, and I started just listening to everything he told me and doing it. I started doing it. And every time he told me to do it, I was like, shit, he's right. He was like, everything he told me, it was like, oh, wow, that actually worked. That was correct. And it started to change the way that I thought about the game. By the end of his time with Thibs, he loved playing for Thibs. He was all about playing for Thibs. He'd talk about how this is the most John Macri content
I was about
ever.
to say, this is like you're injecting me with some kind of very serious drug right now. He has said on the record into microphones, like he has said he felt more prepared playing for Thibs than any coach he ever played for. And he has played for some really good coaches, and he gushes over Ty Lue, who's a great coach. And he said Thibs is the guy. And that team built that chemistry through his process with Thibs, through his process with other players. That took about a year and a half for them to get to that point. Stuff happens over time. I think Hartenstein has improved and has continued to improve throughout his career, and he's gotten better. But a lot of that is contextual. A lot of that is familiarity. A lot of that is trust. And we see defenses where they fly around and they look awesome. And it's like, why is this defense so good? This guy used to suck defensively. Why is he now so good? And it's because they communicate well and they know what they're doing and they're coached well and whatever else. And we just haven't seen with this team yet. I think everybody also assumed, because Brunson and DiVincenzo immediately recovered their chemistry, because DiVincenzo and Hart immediately recovered their chemistry, because Hart and Brunson immediately recovered their chemistry. I think everybody assumed that all the Villanova guys, no matter what, would just reach back to their college days and it would be like they never had a break. Not the case. Especially with Hart and Bridges, at least for my perception. Like, those guys have been definitively not on the same page on both ends on several occasions. Yeah,
it's not the case, and I'm guilty of it. I'm not saying, oh, we shouldn't have known. I'm just saying, now that we've seen it, it's not the case. Everybody's different.
All right. I promised a couple people in the chat that I would get a question to you that they asked, and then I got to get out of here. So this one is from Brian Hernandez. Curious to your thoughts on how much of the early struggles are based on, and I'm going to give you, I'll give you 4 or 5 choices, and I want you to just rank them. You don't have to explain, just like I give you give me a ranking. So chemistry, let's go with like construction of the starting lineup, or like the vision of the main vision of the team. Bridges struggles individually. Brunson struggles individually to the extent that he has struggled, and depth/injuries. I can refresh your recollection on any of those if you need, but I want you to rank them 1 to 5.
1, chemistry. I mean, I kind of think depth and construction of the team are the same. No,
they're overlapping. So those are 2 and 3 in some order.
Yeah. So one chemistry, because I do think that starting lineup is going to get to a point where it's going to go gangbusters on people.
Okay.
I really do. I haven't changed on that. And if they don't, then, then none of the rest of it matters. If the starters do not go gangbusters on the whole league, then none of the other stuff matters.
I agree.
Because it's not like, oh, you're going to be great. No matter how energetic Cam Payne is, it's not like, oh, Cam Payne's going to save the season. That's not going to happen. So I go 1, chemistry, and then I go 2, depth/roster construction, because they did deplete. And then I'd go, you know what? I'll go 1, chemistry. I'll go 2, Bridges. I'll go 3, No, I'll go 2 depth / roster construction. I'll go 3 Bridges and I'll go 4 Brunson.
It's close. Okay. So Bridges is clear. Like Brunson's clearly on the bottom. I agree. I don't think like Brunson's play has it lost them a game yet this year? Maybe it was one game that they lost that was kind of close that he really struggled. The Cleveland game? Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. Everyone has lost to Cleveland. Everyone has lost to Cleveland. It's fine. It's fine when you lose to a 13-0 team.
Okay. This is from Key-Yan1. Any thoughts on what the rotation will look like after 20 games, assuming Precious is back? So I'm going to, for the purposes of this question, let's assume that all the starters are going to continue to play 35 minutes roughly a night. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So that leaves us with 65 minutes left to distribute, if my quick math in my head was correct. So how do you want to distribute those 65 minutes, assuming Precious is back?
Let's say, I think it'll be a little bit less than that. I think there'll be like 70 minutes available because Cat gets into foul trouble, plays 32 and whatever else. So let's say 70. So let's say Deuce gets 25. Let's say Precious gets 20. Let's say Payne gets 13.
All right, so hold on. We're up to
we got 12 minutes left.
We have 12 minutes left. Yeah.
And then
I said Matt Ryan.
It's either Matt Ryan, it's Tyler Kolek.
Really?
Who am I forgetting?
That's the thing. There's nobody else on, unless Shamet is back. I mean, but again, for the purpose of this question, we could assume that he's. Yeah. I mean, Pacome Daddy, I don't know. Ariel Jericho Sims? Yeah, Jericho Sims. Do you think
no,
they're gonna?
I think Sims is out once Precious is back.
Okay.
I think Sims is out once Precious is back. Or maybe Thibs plays an 8-man rotation.
In which case it would look more like Deuce maybe closer to 30.
Precious closer to 25.
Closer to 25.
And Payne just gets the 13 minutes that Brunson doesn't play.
Does he get? Well,
nah, you know what? Okay.
He's been playing him with Brunson pretty much every game, though.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna put. I think he's gonna go 9.
You do.
He's been trying 9 now. He'll go 9 then. Let's say Matt Ryan. And see if he can hit some threes.
I'm happy to give him a long leash. You know,
he can shoot.
Yeah. And he's got, there's a one thing that popped for me being there last night. He is a big human. He's not small.
No, he's not. He's the size of a wing, but he's not the defensive size of a wing. I mean, like he has the cosmetic size of a wing, but it's not like he's locking anybody down. He is there to shoot. He's there to run off of screens and shoot. He's good moving off the ball. He's a really good shooter. Like that is what he is there for. And he could be a weapon for you in transition because he can flock to the wings or the corners and he can drain threes. And we'll see once he gets comfortable. Like he literally hasn't practiced with the team yet. You know, there's like literally they have not had a practice since they signed him because the schedule's been very clunked together.
We should I know you were already waxed poetic about Thibs a minute ago. Could we at least just point out that Thibodeau's, I know you've written about this, you've talked about this in the past. Thibodeau's practice schedule in the season, as he's playing these guys, all these minutes he's playing, is like not how, well, I'll ask you, how would you describe it?
They basically never practice. They so rarely practice. They haven't practiced in weeks. Like they've had, to be clear, if you really want the nitty gritty, what happens is you have a practice day, which is like an official practice day. Everyone's there. You have an official practice. Thibs is there every day, no matter what. Thibs has a home. I don't know if he ever goes to it. He has a home. He's there. The assistants are there every day. And then you either have practice on an off day or you have optionals on an off day, which is exactly what it sounds like. So you can come in, you get your individual work done, and that's about it. And guys obviously have to stay in shape. They have to work out, and the assistant coaches and the video coordinators and everybody else is there to work with them on stuff when they do. But in terms of an official practice and coming in and putting that extra stress on your body and having like an official, oh, it's team practice today, they haven't practiced in a while. It's been a while. It's all I want to know. Because of where the schedule is at. For the most part, you're really going to practice between home games. You're going to practice like between home games when it's not an exhausting stretch. Like right now, they just had a 3 and 4, and then they have another 3 and 4 coming up. So like on a Tuesday, they're not going to practice between that. That's an exhausting stretch. But if you have a stretch of just like game day off, game day off, game day off, game day off, and they're all home, you might practice in between there. If you have 2 consecutive off days, you might practice there. But otherwise, they are not really practicing. And that's kind of just the norm in the NBA now. I mean, I was talking to a coach yesterday, and we were talking about just the rash of injuries around the league. And one of the things he hypothesized to me was that fewer back-to-backs. This is not a doctor, so whatever. But he was like, I wonder if having fewer back-to-backs is hurting the body. I was like, how? Like everybody is worried about back-to-backs. He said, because back in the day, we used to have 20 back-to-backs, and you'd have a back-to-back. And then that also meant because you had the back-to-back, you had 2 consecutive off days. So you could have back-to-back, and then you could have a day off, and then you could practice, and then you could have a game, and you could rest the body for 2 days. And now it's just game, off day, game, off day, game, off day, because the schedule is still basically as long. And it's tougher because you don't get to practice. You don't get to get in that sort of shape. And you're just like game, travel, game, off day, game, travel, game, off day. And you're not getting those extra days of rest. I don't know. I have absolutely no idea what in the world is behind that.
It's interesting. It's a topic that I look forward to you writing about at some point, along with many, many other topics around the league at large, in addition to about the Knicks. Before I let you go, anything you want to plug, promote, something you're working on, something you're excited about? What do you got going on?
I've got a story that's going to be out tomorrow, just our Friday morning. That's just going to be kind of opening up the notebook on some fun things I've noticed from around the league. Had a big deep dive on the Phoenix Suns on Wednesday morning, which you can check that out in The Athletic. And I will have a Knicks story for next week up in The Athletic, probably early next week. I'm going to have a story about the New York Knicks. I will be writing about the New York Knicks. So you can wait to check that out.
I will be honest, I have not gotten to the Phoenix piece yet because it's been a hell of a week. Your story on the Spurs was really enjoyed that, and the Chris Paul of it all as well. Great stuff. Just great stuff so far this season from you.
Thanks, man. Chris was great for that story. He sat down with me for an hour. So that was really cool of him to sit down for an hour. That was a fun story to write, just about what an absolutely competitive maniac that guy is. I mean, to just degrees. You meet hyper successful people, like really hyper successful people, just so many of them have the same personality type. He has the personality type of a Wall Street CEO.
I love it.
It's the same mentality. It's the same thing awesome. When you meet these hyper successful people who have reached the pinnacle of their profession, in a profession that everybody wants to reach the pinnacle of. And I find those people very interesting. Chris Paul is a very interesting person.
He, for as great of his career as he has had, and you could argue he's a top 25 all-time player. Be curious where average person has him on their list when all is said and done. His post-playing career might be as interesting because you could just see it going in a number of directions.
Yeah, because he's like really, I mean, he's not just a basketball player.
Yeah.
He's a smart, calculating, interesting human being.
Did you write that he wants to own a team in that story?
Yes.
Or did I read that? Yeah. Okay.
No. Yeah. That was me. He doesn't want to coach, but his viewpoints on the league. I mean, look, he was the head of the Players Association. He has interests in the business side of basketball that a lot of people don't, and he will have an interesting post-playing career. I'm very intrigued to see where he goes, because he is one thing I didn't write in that story, and I had in my notes, but I didn't put it in. But he is other than LeBron, he might be the most connected player in the NBA.
Oh, that's an interesting one.
I was talking to Ray Ritter, who is the head of media relations for the Golden State Warriors. And Ray told me, Ray he's been in the league. Ray's not old, so I'm not saying that Ray is old. Ray's not an old guy, but he's just one of those people where you get the vibes where it's like, have you been in the league since its inception? Like, were you just like the same age in 1947 when this started? He knows everyone. Ray just knows everyone, and he's been around everything. He was with the Kobe Shaq Lakers. Like he's been doing this a long time. And Ray's joke is that nobody takes longer. And he had this joke last year when CP was with the Warriors. His joke was that nobody takes longer to come off the floor after a game than Chris Paul, because every single person has to say hi to him. There's always 7 people on the other team who he mentored. And then there are probably 3 other people who he's rivals with. And then as he's walking off the court, there's some successful business person who he knows through a venture capital investment. And then there's the other team's owner. He knows every owner. Like when he went to the Spurs, like he's one of the only players in the league who, like, when he goes to the Spurs, like he was talking directly to just Peter Holt, the owner of the Spurs, where it's like, that's not really a normal way to go about your free agency for most players. But because he was the head of the Players Association, because he has all of these business interests, he's very connected around. So he's a extremely interesting. I mean, on top of being obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer, he's an extremely interesting person, a very interesting mind.
This is all to say, go read Fred's story over at The Athletic, along with everything he writes. And go subscribe to The Athletic, and make sure when you get to the bottom of one of Fred's stories, you can choose 3 options about how much you enjoyed the story. Make sure you choose the one that gives the big happy face. I think it's a green happy face, if I recall correctly, because I always do that for you. I always push the green happy face button.
Yeah, looks like that. I appreciate it.
It looks like
I'm glad you're supporting.
It's great.
It looks like John after a successful Thibs challenge.
Yeah, which, by the way, okay, we're not getting off topic again. I would have liked for him to save the challenge that he used last night, but that's okay. Well,
you know what? Hot take. Even if he didn't use it on the deuce play,
you don't think that was getting overturned, or he would have used it on something else?
He would have used it on something else. Right. Chances are you don't have your challenge in your back pocket with 4 seconds left.
Probably not.
If you have your challenge in your back pocket with 4 seconds left, then you probably mismanaged your challenges.
I forget what it was, but there was another play that happened during the game, I think in the second half, where it felt challengeable and they didn't have a challenge. So maybe he would have used it there. Okay. Enough of this. I really got to go. You have to go work. We all have things to do. Thank you, Fred Katz, for coming on the Knicks Film School Podcast. It's always a pleasure to have you on here, even if I may joke otherwise. And thank you, everybody out there, for listening to another episode of the show. If you want to help us out, we don't have a green happy face button, but we do have opportunities for you to rate us and review us. So please do those things. And I will be back with more fun and games, I think, as you're listening to this tonight, for Knicks Nets on the post game there. So until then, take care, and we'll be back with more fun and games before you know it. Peace out.